As of March 2022, 75 female astronauts have been to space. This number has not nearly been accurately reflected on screen in the space subgenre of science fiction cinema. Rarer still is the depiction of female astronauts as mothers. Women who work in astronomy, like many women who have ever lived, have historically been known to mother children. Despite this, the representation of such in film and television, or lack thereof, would have audiences believe otherwise. Proxima, which premiered in 2019 and was directed by Alice Winocour, sought to change that perception. The film's protagonist, Sarah, is the primary caregiver of her 8-year-old daughter, Stella. Sarah is an astronaut preparing for a year-long mission to space. She is separated from her spouse, Thomas, but leaves Stella with him at the beginning of the film in anticipation of her training and subsequent journey. One scene in particular I find to be a poignant depiction of Sarah's realistic struggle to find a balance between her role as a mother and her role as an astronaut. Prior to this scene, Sarah has scheduled Stella for a visit to see her in Star City, where she's training, in the hopes that they may be able to spend some quality time together before Sarah goes off on her long voyage. Stella arrives while her mother is finishing up a training session. During this training exercise, Sarah is accompanied by the other astronauts on her team, Mike and Anton. Necessarily present as they are in the lead-up to the mission's launch, Sarah's motherhood is under constant scrutiny by her teammates. Already perceived as lesser by nature of being the only female astronaut on her team, Sarah has to work even harder to prove her dedication to her work when her prioritization of her daughter begins to serve as a distraction.
C'est elle qui est sortie en premier?
Elle était des autres à remonter.
Stella is surprised to see her mother emerge from the water first, pulling herself up and then helping the men after her. In the effort to prove herself as an astronaut who also happens to be a devoted mother, Sarah has continuously had to, metaphorically speaking, pull herself out of the water on her own strength alone. As the 3 astronauts head back to shore, Sarah is once again out in front of her teammates, this time in her eagerness to reunite with her daughter. Throughout the film, Sarah must reconcile with the knowledge that she is, in a sense, abandoning her daughter. The emotional toll caused by the contradictory demands of independence and motherhood sometimes seems insurmountable. Sarah loves her daughter so overwhelmingly that it does cause her to become distracted from her duties. She breaks protocol and changes rules to accommodate for her daughter's presence. This additional pressure placed upon Sarah's abilities causes tension with her male counterparts, particularly Mike. Mike is also a parent, but he appears to have not found it as complicated to separate his work life from his family life as Sarah has. He is disdainful about Sarah's preoccupation with her daughter. Fathers of the space movie exist with their own set of expectations as to who they should be and how they should act. Male astronauts, in fiction and in real life, are allowed to be proud of their children, if they do have any, even encouraged to show them off. But it doesn't make them weak, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones expected to take care of them, and they're not blamed, nor do they have to feel guilt for leaving them. Female astronauts do not receive the same kind of praise. Rather, they're faced with criticism for the fact that they have children and still chose to do this job, or vice versa. A man is expected to be stoic and often unemotional, able to leave things behind without fear of attachment, or simply possess the mental strength to push such feelings aside when the time comes. Women, and particularly mothers on the other hand, are tied to the home, expected to conform to their domestic role, to encourage their children's happiness and growth, and to hold their family together. Despite this expectation and the societal judgment that arises when it is not fulfilled, motherhood is looked down upon. How can women perform their feminine duties if they leave the house to work? How can they perform these duties if they leave the earth altogether? If being a mother and having a full-time career are hard to balance, then motherhood and space are utterly incompatible. Proxima, while it doesn't wholly reject this notion, depicts this uneasy harmony through Sarah's internal and external battle between what she feels and knows are her duties as a mother, as well as her all-encompassing love for her daughter, and her dedication to a job that demands an abnormal level of disengagement from the rest of humanity.
Tu sais, c'est peut-être mieux qu'on s'appelle pas trop en ce moment où c'est compliqué. Je dois vraiment me concentrer.
In such a notoriously isolated setting, figuratively and literally detached from the world, it is not unusual for so-called masculine traits to dominate the personalities of the characters commonly found within this subgenre. Obviously, emotions do not have a gender, nor do personality traits. However, there is a pattern to be found within the particular traits that expressly benefit the characters who appear in space movies, and those characteristics are almost always assigned to male protagonists. Space movies are thus a conspicuous expression of these socially constructed gender roles. Space itself becomes a gendered environment, and these films would seem to make it clear that women do not possess the particular impassiveness that is required in order to successfully exist within it. This is evidenced both by the general lack of female representation in space movies, or when women are present, they are the exception to other women, as they reject or simply lack these stereotypically feminized traits. Any kind of attachment to humanity is presented as one such trait, and can only act as a detriment.
They've had families, huh?
No attachments. My father insisted.
The female protagonists that do feature in space movies are independent, ass-kicking women like Alien's Ripley, or grieving and lonely like Gravity's Ryan. These women either never did or no longer have families or children that they are tied down to. They are free to complete their perilous missions without attachment to Earth and without regrets about who they're leaving behind. All of this would suggest, then, that children must logically only act as an impediment to a female astronaut, and therefore cannot possibly harmoniously exist in their world. This assumption, however, does not reflect reality, as Proxima's credit sequence shows us. This scene blurs the line between life and work. Sarah's role as astronaut and as mother come together as one. On screen, children are rarely allowed into this world that Stella has been invited to observe. Unlike other barely present children of the space movie genre, Stella's feelings are embraced and sensitively handled. Her emotional responses make her perspective on the situation evident. Sarah's awareness of her daughter's conflict exacerbates her guilt, but demonstrates her attentiveness as a mother, making sure Stella's voice is heard and that we hear it. In this scene, we watch Sarah wade out into the water from Stella's point of view. In full space gear, Sarah leaves behind the safety of the shore and her daughter to watch her go. Stuck behind on her little plot of Earth, Stella and the audience have no choice but to reluctantly accept the growing distance between them. The bracelet that Stella wraps around her mother's wrist is a piece of herself, an attempt to bridge the divide that threatens to separate them. Sarah wears it as she re-enters the water, keeping their worlds connected. What this scene and this movie show is a woman who is as devoted to her job as she is to her daughter. A good astronaut and a good mother, she is torn between two worlds and two dreams, a struggle that she does not see her male counterparts faced with in the same way. Her journey appears different to theirs. She is ahead and apart from them, drawn to the love of her child, but restrained by her commitment to her own passion, where she's happy. Proxima depicts a realistic reflection of the unique experiences of fragility and vulnerability that come with something as unnatural as leaving the Earth, and something as natural as being a mother. The movie ends as this scene does, a child waiting for her mother to return, but knowing they're both smiling as she leaves.